Wow. Hey, good to see everybody today. Um, Today I was going to talk about in the Cashflow 101 game, I was going to start out on the center portion or the beginning portion of the game that's called the rat race. And I got a little picture here in case I don't put anything else up there. It's this thing that's a wheel, okay? But I thought of something today, or actually the last week has been making me think of a lot of things. And so today's video is going to be a little bit of a rant. And I'll try to stay calm. But I want to let you know something about what's going on in the world. The reason why I want you guys to study this stuff, whether it's with me or someone else, is we don't have a choice anymore. Okay, we really don't. We got to learn this stuff. And let me talk about what was the trigger. I was driving around doing some errands recently, and I was really busy, and I didn't have much cash on me, and I thought, I need to fill the hole. I'm a little hungry. So I went out to get some food, fast food. And the reason why I do this, I'm really avoiding going out to eat, especially the fast food. And there's a friend of mine that I'll try to find his link. I'm going to put up talking about food and what's good for you and what's not. It's unconventional. But anyhow, the stuff that we eat is probably doing more harm to us than good. But I'm not an expert. I'll put the link down below. But anyhow, I want to show you something. I went to Taco Bell. I have nothing against Taco Bell, but generally it's cheap, fast Mexican food just to fill up the hole, when you're hungry. So anyhow, I got a thing called a Mexican pizza. And so when I looked at it, it kind of reminded me of what the rat race on the board looks like. So I got a Mexican pizza, and I bought a medium diet Coke or Pepsi. Put a straw right there. And in college, I used to eat this stuff a lot because it was cheap. I didn't have to spend a lot of money back then I didn't know it was bad for you, but anyhow. Cheap way to have lunch, right? Or dinner. Anyhow, these two items, and if you've ever had this stuff, it's not a lot of food. It's not a lot of, it's about that big. It cost me $10. I was a little shocked, but I noticed when you drive by fast foods a lot lately, there's usually, back in the day, at lunchtime, there would be lines out to the street, for the drive-through. There was only one car in front of me on this one. So I'm thinking every time I go get something to eat or go to the store or pay bills, it keeps going up, right? So anyhow, I just want to tell you, that's what triggered all this stuff. Another thing, I drive around towns when I travel, and one thing I've noticed over the past decade or so is when you drive around, there are different kind of housing areas. Well, let me back up a little bit before the last decade. I remember when I was still working in IT and aerospace, I traveled down to Southern California to Beverly Hills. Now, when I think of Beverly Hills, I think of Ritz and glitz and glamour and wealth and all that. But what was interesting is I was driving from place to place. I would cross a street and I would go into a really nice neighborhood. There's nice cars in the driveway, large house, large yard. And then the next cross street, I would go in a place where there's bars on the windows. And then the next intersection, I'm back in places that look very wealthy. And I thought, this is strange. This is all Beverly Hills, and it's just a mix and match of things. And I drive around when I go places and just check out the area because I like to explore. I used to do real estate investing, and that's one of the things I did. I would drive in neighborhoods and figure out if this is a place I would like to invest in or a place I'd avoid or anything like that. Well, not only do I see the change from block to block, but I've noticed something's starting to become missing, becoming a ghost. And that is the middle class housing. I don't see it much anymore. And back in the day when I was in school and younger, there'd be a push to get people to get into college. because they thought that would help bring people out of poverty. Now, I came from a working class family. My dad was a construction worker, electrician. Back in those days, generally it was a father that would work, a mother would stay home, take care of the kids in the house. Both would have a car, you'd have a house you owned, things like that. Today, there's people in their 40s that have had one kid and they have two cars because they both have to work now and they can barely afford rent, let alone buying a house. And they get old clunky cars, they don't buy new cars. So something's changing. So, I want to put that wheel back up there. Okay, that's the Mexican pizza. Well, if you ever had as a child or you have kids that have hamsters or mice or rats, there's a thing called a hamster wheel. It's a metal cage. It's up on like a tripod kind of a thing, and it spins, and the animal will get in there and run like crazy. I don't know if that's just to burn off energy or what, but they all tend to do that. So when you're on the hamster wheel, what happens? You run, you're done, you get off. Are you any place different? No, you're in the same place. Same thing when you go to the gym. Either you or someone else is running on the treadmill and they're sweating and huffing and puffing, and when they step off, they're in the same place. Well, that's what the rat race is in this game. It's basically as you go around it until you start learning things to get out of it. It's just like being on a hamster wheel. You go from paycheck to paycheck to paycheck. Sometimes I had a manager years ago joke about, well, I got paid today, I'm back up to zero. So yeah, it's hard to save nowadays. So anyhow, the hamster wheel, the treadmill, whatever, is a good symbol for what the rat race is like. So this is kind of like what's happening in our culture. And as a little aside, this has nothing to do with politics, anything like that. All I got to say is that if you're voting for someone you think is going to save you, the government's not going to save you, okay? Back in the day, I was on welfare for a while. And one thing I learned about government programs is it's kind of a type of slavery. And what I mean by that is, let's see if I can get this on the board here. Say this is the amount. This represents an amount you get every month from the government. Okay, there's strings attached. You have to go back in when you're unemployed and when you're collecting assistance. You have to say, okay, I've gone out, I've interviewed or sent out resumes or applications for all these jobs, I'm looking. But if you don't have a lot of experience, a lot of education, it takes a bit longer, or at least it did back then. Today, I have no idea. It's a whole nother world how this thing works because everything's online. It's not like it used to be. But this has not changed. So let me show you something. You're making this amount of money on your assistance, and if you get a minimum wage job, you make about that much money. Now, once you get the job, what happens? Let me get another color here. When you get the job, can you see that? The assistance goes away. You notice that your minimum wage job, you're making less money than you were on assistance. So what does that mean? You're going backwards. So if you're trying to eat, especially if you have a family, you're probably going to stick with the assistance because you're doing better, right? So here's the deal. What I had to do, I figured out that I didn't, because if I got a job, I would have probably lost my apartment, wouldn't be able to put gas in my car, my little tiny car, or eat on a regular basis. So I figured out this game, and then I thought, I need to find something else. So I started learning how to really apply myself. In other words, just not looking for a job, but looking for something that pays a bit more. Maybe I have more responsibility or whatever. And I did this. The marker's drying out. I got it so that it was above the assistance. I wasn't willing to take that job because I didn't want to go backwards. I took this job because I knew I was going to lose this, and now ahead of the game. The same thing works with Social Security, especially when you're on disability or whatever. You know, you can earn so much, and if you, for whatever reason, earn above that threshold, just like this, that goes away. And guess what? Maybe you just had a lucky month that you were able to make some extra income. It's not sustainable, and now you got to reapply for your Social Security. That is slavery. Now, the same thing with working for a living, you know, getting the paycheck. I call it being addicted to a paycheck. I remember when I was still working in aerospace, I wasn't planning on staying in that field or in that industry forever. But one thing led to another. Time flies by. Next thing I know, I'm 2 years away from retirement. Now, am I going to quit right then and possibly lose my retirement or the amount of my retirement? Oh, heck no. I'm going to stay. So, you know, again, it's like slavery. If you want to go do something else, you got to weigh, you know, which way you're going to go. And most people, including myself, decided to stick with the paycheck. Okay. Where's my eraser? I lost it. Oh well. Oh, there it is. Anywho, so why am I saying this? Why am I talking about these things? I mean, it's pretty negative, right? Well, let me give you an example of how things are working out for us. I remember in high school, I had a teacher that really was pushing people to go to college because the belief was, or the philosophy was, go to school, get good grades, get into a good college, get a degree, get a good job, work your rear end off, and retire then die. That was the plan. So what they were telling us is, now this is high income, middle, and low. Okay? We were led to believe that because of education, that people would raise up in the strata. So this is an example of what they're thinking. There's fewer people down here in the working class, and you got people up here that are wealthy, and most of the people, because of education, they would get into the middle. There'd be more middle class people. I think that worked for a while. However, because of inflation all around, and other things that are going on, but inflation primarily, this is gone. And I don't know if it's coming back or not. I'm not going to predict. What it looks like now is this. The people in the middle are getting pushed down. If you're in a union or a government job, they have things called COLAs, which stand for cost of living adjustments. I used to get those in some jobs I had. We always appreciated those because we were making more money. And I'll put this in the notes as well, a link to what I consider the real inflation rate, because what you hear on the news and from the government isn't correct. I mean, you can feel it. You can feel that it's higher than it is just by going to the grocery store. So people are not able to keep up and get better, even though you're getting raises like they used to be, and now you're getting pushed down the line. So you have more people that can't afford new cars, can't afford to buy a house, things like that. A little side story. I remember one time back in the day, I got a little notice from my boss. We would go through our assessments of how we did the previous year and whether we're going to get a raise or not. And it was based on our assessment. If it was above expectations, you got a higher raise. If it was expectations, you got a medium raise. And if you're below, you probably didn't get anything. And he handed me the paper and I looked at it, and I already did some calculations what the percentages would be. before I met with him. And one day he would meet with everybody in the team behind a closed door and talk. And I remember he had a big smile on his face and shook my hand and patted me on the back for a great job. And I kind of laughed at him, and he said, "Why are you laughing?" And I said, "I really appreciate this because I'm getting behind still, but not as much as if I didn't get a raise. But I tried to tell him what the real inflation rate was. We ain't keeping up. All we're doing is running on that hamster wheel and ending up in the same place or backwards." So it's interesting how our culture is circling around these raises and colas. So anyhow, we're getting pushed down. So I bring that up because we need to learn a new way of doing things. We need to have a different way of seeing things and thinking, and we need to develop skills and ability to find opportunities so that we don't work ourselves to death to make a living. Okay, so what we need to do, we have three choices basically. We can go ahead and just let this happen. We can take, lesser and lesser jobs. We can let the inflation rate push us down. So we intentionally let it happen. We can do nothing and go the same direction, or we need to learn how to do this. We need to find a way to get out of that hole, because as long as you're sitting there, you're a sitting duck, okay? Let's talk about other things. Now, you probably hear about lottery winners that win millions of dollars, and you hear of celebrities and ball players that make millions of dollars in their career, and a couple of years after they make that money, when they retire, whether it's forced retirement like from injuries or age, or they decide to retire because they think they made enough money, but they're living high on the hog. They have a new lifestyle now. Same thing with lottery winners. They develop a new lifestyle. It's not sustainable, because once you stop making the money, like winning the lottery again, or still playing basketball, you're eating into that nest egg, okay? So a lot of these people, they don't learn what I'm trying to teach here, and they end up being broke. Many of them end up being worse than they were before they won the lottery, okay? So this is why I have a passion for this. And I'm not the best, I know that, but I really enjoy teaching this game. And again, I have no association with Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad Company, anything like that. I just find it as being a very good training tool. And the reason why I push people to go to these games, these meetups, to where they play with other kinds of people, the thing is, people are there for one reason. They want to learn this stuff. And when you go to these events, there's a lot of people that are already either interested in investing or investors now. I'm sure if you were working in a corporation, or if you're in a nonprofit, or a lot of different places, you probably heard of the expression or the concept of brainstorming. Brainstorming is basically when a group of people get together. You have a problem or an issue, and you're trying to address it. And you go around the room, and if it's done correctly, there are no bad ideas. And they write them all up on the board. And those ideas stimulate ideas in other brains around the room, and you start honing down solutions that are possible. Some are silly, but you start getting down to ones that might really work. Now, if you do this yourself, you may come up with some solutions, but when you're around other people, it's like a feeding frenzy that it's amazing to watch if you've never been in one. So when you're playing this game with other people, you start getting their ideas, because they see things differently than you do, or they have some experience and they can teach you things, and vice versa, you can teach them things. It's a wonderful experience. If you've ever been to one of these games, like how I do it, it's basically I go through some concepts at the beginning, show people how to do the game, and by the time we're wrapping up towards the end of the game, when people are starting to get out of the rat race, the facilitator, unless they have more ideas to add to the mix, to say, okay, right now we're going to simulate a recession, or housing prices are going through the roof, whatever. Unless they're doing that, they have less and less to do, because now people are learning, and they're feeding each other and they're helping each other. It's a great way to learn. Plus, you also learn about cooperation, because investing, especially real estate investing, is a team sport. Doing things on your own, I don't care what it is. I always say, don't do it by yourself. Whether you're out jogging at night or whether you decide to go backcountry skiing, when you watch the news and people disappear or get hurt or killed, they're generally alone, right? But the thing is that's why, when you play baseball, like team sports, you don't have one person that does every position. It wouldn't work out. So it's the same thing in everything else in life. It's a team sport. You need to have people, because if you do everything yourself, you're limited. You can only do so much. You only have 24 hours in a day, and you only have so much energy and so much knowledge and blah, blah, blah. Okay? So I really encourage that. So next video, I'll get into the rat race. We'll break that down. We'll talk about the different parts of it, what it means, why it represents most of our lives, those of us that are still, excuse me, in the rat race, and how to get out of the rat race. And I just want you to be aware that if you don't do anything, some things are going to happen to you. You can't get out of it. I have that experience myself. I have seen what's going on today. And unfortunately, the forces of the economy over the past few decades have been very destructive. And I don't think we have a choice not to try to develop wealth for ourselves and for our children, because there's no one coming in on a white horse to save us, let me tell you. Anywho, so let's get back to this. This is the cash flow board. This inner circle here is the rat race. We all start out there unless we were born with a silver spoon in our mouth. Most of us haven't, okay? And then outside is what they call the fast track, and that's where we're trying to get to. That's when your passive income meets or exceeds your expenses. That's freedom, okay? That means you have more time and more resources available to get you going. Oh, speaking of resources, also if you play this game in a group setting, it's a great way to network as well. So if you decide to get into doing investing of any kinds, but primarily real estate, just like going to the RIA meeting, real estate investors associations. This is where you meet people, you learn things. People are the key to getting to where you want to go. But anyhow, I just saw what's going on. It reminded me of everything I've been seeing, and I just realized if you don't do anything, you're going to lose. It's not a thing where I'm comfortable anymore. If you just look for comfort, that won't last. It won't last, because the economy will eat everything up you have. It will eat your lunch. So anyhow, just to wrap up, I want you to think about all these things. See if there's anything else I want to talk about. I think that's all for now. But yeah, you need to learn this, whether you learn it from me or someone else that's on YouTube. Books, going to these meetings, classes, whatever. I encourage you 100%. I'd rather see you successful and moving up and not getting caught in the downward slide, whether you watch my videos or not. But this is really important, folks. Really important. So until next time, next time we'll get into the game more, okay? Take care. Bye-bye.